We're welcoming you here at this beautiful, beautiful Chabad Center. But our hosts for this evening remain the fabulous Dana and Michael Horner, who were hosting us at their house. But the weather has been inclement. And so many people had their hair done, and we just did not want to take the frizz risk that anybody's frizz blow dries. We just didn't want it. So we are here tonight, but again, to the Warners, thank you for always being so gracious to us and for coming this evening. For those of you who may not know what Momentum is, we're not an organization so much as we are a movement. We are a movement that began just a bit over a decade ago when a group of 8 very diverse women from the Washington, D.C. area determined that what was required in this world was a renewal and a renaissance of Jewish values as it related to the way we move through this world, how we behave, and who we become. And they spent a great deal of time working on projects that might further that. And what rose to the top was this idea of what was fondly called, before they told us to stop using that title, birthright for moms. And essentially, the premise behind this idea was that if you could impact a young man or a young woman on birthright, then who did you impact? A young man or a young woman. But if you got the influencer, which is to say, if you were able to influence the influencer in the house, who is inarguably the mother, and you inspired that mother enough, that mother would in turn, based on her evolving self, her attitude and her passions, impact and inspire her entire family. And if you could inspire enough families, you could change entire communities. And if you could change enough communities, you could change the world. That was the lofty goal. And now, a little over a decade later, every single continent on this globe partners with Momentum to bring both women and men for our transformational one-year program, the Year of Growth, which has at its core, the jewel in its crown, is an 8-day, fully subsidized trip to Israel, where in that period of time, they come to become connected to our 4 pillars. The first pillar of Momentum is to connect to Jewish values. The second is to take action in your communities. The third, to engage with Israel. And the final, to foster unity, but not uniformity. Those pillars and our dedication and devotion to the values that we teach over that 8-day period and prior and for the year after has transformed entire communities. It has accomplished above and beyond our wildest dreams. This evening's program we called Why Investing in Values is the Greatest Investment. And while we began small, we grew and grew and grew until the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs in Israel came to us, mostly because the merchants in Israel said, who are all these women and why do they shop so much? Also, they had to add about 500 bathrooms in every single city on our trips. And these women, hundreds of women, marching through the streets of Jerusalem, of Tel Aviv, of Tiberias, of Sfat, all the way up and down the country, in their colorful pashminas with their name tags, their credit cards, and their passion for Jewish wisdom and souvenirs. And they said, who are you? who are, in fact, the handmade signs on the street of Ben Yehuda in Jerusalem, which used to say, incorrectly spelled, momentum 10% off. And you know that what they would do is that in those days it was called JWRP, but nobody could pronounce that, and some people thought it was WKRP in Cincinnati. And the people from Russia couldn't pronounce it, and it was a problem. We didn't know what to do. And the trip was always called Momentum, so we decided to rebrand it as Momentum. The second year we were there, those handmade, badly spelled signs were now permanent signs that said Momentum, 20% off. Now mind you, they spent about, 3 or 4 days hiking the prices up 20% before we got back. But that's okay. These are Jewish values. We embrace it all. And the government said to us, if you get into Eastern Europe, if you double the numbers, if you make this huge, not just good, not just big, not just great, but enormous, we'll be in, and we will help and invest in you. And we did. And now, we are an investment firm. What do we invest in? Women. Jewish women. Because Jewish women are the core of the household. And as she goes, so goes everyone else. I want you to take a look for a moment at a recent trip video, just so you get a little taste of what happens to women on the Momentum journey. Please put your eyes towards the screen. What you didn't see was that under the bus were bags and bags and bags of Judaica. Okay, before we go on with the program tonight, which is a real treat, not just for me, but for you as well, because we are having an esteemed panel of people who have believed in us, one of them who founded us, who help all of us understand what we're doing and why. But before that, this is a Jewish event, and Jewish values determine that nachas for grandparents comes before anything else. And as such, we happen to have a young man by the name of Benjamin Hirschman here. And he is, I'm going to read his bio because, you're important. He is the source of much nachas and the grandson of our hosts, Dana and Michael Werner, and at just 14 years of age, he has been speaking on behalf of the Friends of IDF since he was 9 years, and currently takes a college-level course on public speaking at Florida International University. He is clearly a nachas machine, and we are it's not there. We are delighted to hear from him this evening. Please join me in welcoming Benjamin Hirschman.
I just want to make it known that for some reason I'm more nervous now than when I was 9 years old at the FIDF event. Probably because back then I didn't know and I was just standing there and it was different. So, good evening everyone. On behalf of my grandparents, Dana and Michael Werner, I'd like to thank you all for being here. My grandma encouraged me to speak today, and just as she is a very proud grandmother, I'm extremely proud to be her grandson. And I also want to represent the next generation of our family. So my grandmother has been a tremendous influence on my life, as she has taught me the importance of giving back, knowing our heritage, and supporting the causes that reflect our values, which is a legacy that she inherited from her own mother, who was a tireless leader of the Jewish state and the Jewish people. And that is why we are proud to host this event for Momentum. We believe in Momentum's mission, which is to empower mothers, inspire their relationship to the Jewish state and Jewish beliefs, and enable them to share their experiences and their connection to their families. And I'm an example of this, as I'm a reflection of the values that my great-grandmother instilled on my grandmother. And me being here today shows how one mother's impact inspires a family for generations to come. Thank you.
I actually thought we were humoring his parents, but this kid is the real thing. Wow. Wow. Soon we'll need you as a trip leader for the men's momentum. We would like to have you. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to invite several people up. I'm going to begin actually first, I think, by reading their bios. Why? I was saying this morning to the women. There are some people who are worthy of their bios being read. These are people who have spent their entire lives on some level or another investing in our peoplehood. And we owe them tremendous thanks, not just for what they've done for Momentum, not just for their support here, but for all of us, for our homeland, for the land of Israel, for all of us. I'm going to begin with Mrs. Karen Davidson. If you wouldn't mind standing up. No. Come here, woman. Right here. Oh, she hates this. And too bad. Too bad. I think I'm going to put you right here in the middle. Karen Davidson is a dedicated community leader and a philanthropist working in metropolitan Detroit and the state of Israel. She is a member of the board of directors of the William Davidson Foundation, which is a private family foundation established by her late husband, Bill, to advance for future generations the economic, cultural, and civic vitality of southeastern Michigan, the state of Israel, and the Jewish community. Mrs. Davidson also serves as the chair of the Foundation's executive committee. In addition to her work at the Foundation, she serves as a board member of several renowned philanthropic organizations, including the William Davidson Institute at the University of Michigan, the Weizmann Institute of Science, and Startup Nation Central. She's a member of the University of Michigan's President's Advisory Group. She's a supporter of both the Sarah Wetzman Davidson Tower at Hadassah Hospital and the Israel Antiquities Authority. But that's not all. She is a graduate of the University of Michigan. She has an honorary degree from the William Davidson's Graduate School of Jewish Education, the Jewish Theological Seminary. She has 3 children, 2 stepchildren. She is a proud grandmother of 9 grandchildren, and she's just one fabulous woman. Karen, thank you. Seriously, this is verified. Okay, the next one. Where's Miss Debbie Hochberg? Stand up and get over here. Come and sit right here, sweetheart. Whoops. Deborah Hochberg is an accomplished philanthropist and nonprofit professional who has guided Momentum's mission since joining our board in December 2021. She has spearheaded our partnership work. We couldn't be more excited to announce her as Momentum's board president-elect. She is a senior advisor at the Polly Singer Foundation. Debbie works with organizations and partners seeking to increase their impact. She serves on the boards of the Harold Grinspoon Foundation, the board of One Table, and the Jewish Food Society. And prior to her nonprofit roles, she served as the Director of Investment Relations for Maltex Inc., where she built investor relationships and ran corporate strategy. Again, a real lightweight. She began her career at Merrill Lynch & Company. She has an MBA from Harvard Business School, of course, and an AP in Biology from Harvard College. She lives in Westchester County, New York, with Ben, her husband of 20 years, and their 3 children. This is Debbie Hochberg. All right, the air is getting thin, not just as it's Aspen. Okay, last but certainly not least, I want to introduce you to Mr. Louis Mayberg. Mr. Mayberg's career spans over 38 years in the financial services and investment industries. Where are you? Where are you? Come on. Come and sit down. He is the CEO of SiLogic Inc. It's a cloud computing infrastructure and endpoint protection provider. I don't even know what that is. Guys, okay, good. He is a co-founder and principal of ProShares and ProFunds, exchange-traded funds and mutual funds, where he served as president. In 1986, he co-founded National Capital Companies, LLC, an investment banking firm where, among other things, he manages financial services hedge fund. Louis also spent more than a decade working on inner-city urban renewal projects, helping low-income working families purchase affordable homes. A trustee of the Mayberg Foundation, Mr. Mayberg is an active community volunteer and philanthropist, serving on international, national, and local boards. Currently, he's a member of Asia Torres Amuta and VAD, and is a Hillel board chair at his alma mater, George Washington. He escaped last month. As an entrepreneurial philanthropist, he counts among his most impactful initiatives Momentum, the Jewish Education Innovation Challenge, and the Mayberg Center for Jewish Education and Leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, this is some group. We got plenty to learn from them. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to start, I think, by passing this microphone, which you will pass one to the other, okay? And I'm going to sit down here for a minute and begin this conversation. I think that we should start on the most simple of basis so that you understand why they are related to us. But I also want to hear from each of these people why, based on the theme of this evening, investing in values, specifically Jewish values, is actually a valuable, or perhaps the most valuable investment there is. So, Debbie, if I might call you Debbie? Please do. Okay. If you could start by telling us how you got involved with Momentum, what Momentum is to you, and your vision about the importance of Jewish values.
With pleasure. First of all, Dana and Michael, thank you for hosting us tonight. And Ben, you are an inspiration. So I look forward to following you and seeing where you go. And if you are our future, we are in a very good place. So thank you for that. So I became involved with Momentum during COVID with Adrian and Karen, actually. We started learning over Zoom. Karen and another friend asked if I would join them to learn. And I grew up in a very secular, non-Jewish community. I was raised Jewishly. My paternal grandparents are Holocaust survivors. And being Jewish was always important, but I had never done any formal learning. So it was COVID. I had some free time. I didn't have to leave my living room or put on clothing to do this, so I was very happy to oblige. So we started learning with Adrian, who, as I'm sure you have picked up, is incredibly inspiring and can make anything really interesting. And she really introduced me to Jewish values. And I was hooked very early on. I really enjoyed learning, exploring what Judaism is, and really digging into something that has always been a part of my life, but I never really took the time to learn what Judaism could mean to me in a very personal way. Then I was invited to join the Momentum Grand Trip in November of 2021. To be perfectly honest, I had no idea what I was getting into. And in fact, because it was still COVID, I was like, well, we're not actually going to get on an airplane. We're not actually going to go anywhere, so I'll say yes. And I'm really not committed to anything, so here we go. And that is the truth. That is the truth. And so I went on the Momentum Grand Trip, and I really didn't know what to expect. And looking at Sherry, we were there together, and every day, I learned more and I was exposed to more, and I just found myself opening up in a way that I had not opened up with a bunch of women who I actually didn't know. And I was so moved, joined the board afterwards, and actually just went on my first mission trip this summer, and I'm really immersing myself in everything Momentum so that I can hopefully help lead this incredible organization and not screw it up too much and only do good things.
We won't let you. Just tell me for a moment, when I think about the trajectory of the women who come on this trip, usually they are very unaffiliated. They don't have a lot of investment on any level in their Jewish identities, right? We don't have any agenda. Our agenda is really clear. We want you to come back really attached to your birthright, to engage with Israel, to take action in your communities, and to foster unity without uniformity. But if I'm not incorrect, based on your lofty resume, you are already doing 3 of those 4 things, right?
Yes, actually. So we were talking about this earlier. The truth is, I was sort of, I had my moment September 11th, 2001. I happened to be standing at the World Trade Center on 9/11, and I saw both planes hit the buildings. I was working in finance at the time, and to me, that was my call to action. And I became very involved with a bunch of nonprofit organizations focused on building support connections to Israel. So I have actually been doing nonprofit work really to help Israel for over 20 years. And ended up at the Paul Singer Foundation about 10 years ago, which was a platform that was completely aligned with my own values, Jewish Israel and American values, and an opportunity to elevate the work that I had been doing to a national and international level. So, when it comes to Momentum's 4 goals, I was taking action. Unity without uniformity was always a part of my life. I was very connected to Israel, but I didn't have the Jewish values. So Momentum filled a void that I didn't even know I was missing until Momentum introduced it to me. And for me, the values piece is the why. And it's the why the Jews have survived for so many thousands of years. And I actually think it's the why that is key to our future. Because all the other things can come, but without those basic values, without knowing what Judaism means in our heart and to you as an individual, what you can do for yourself, your family, your community, and everybody around you, the rest doesn't have the meaning that it can and should have.
Well, I hope that all of these values and meaning will serve you in your day-to-day work, but you are the kind of role model that we are honored to have as our incoming president. So
Right back at you.
Okay, let's pass the mic now to Mrs. Karen Davidson. Karen, so I'm going to ask you to tell us what inspires you about Momentum and why you have invested in us and why you believe Jewish values are also an excellent investment.
Thank you, but let me get this out of the way first. Dana, I have a granddaughter who's about 12. She's a lovely Jewish girl. She likes long walks on the beach. We'll talk in about 10 years, okay?
It's a merger.
Is that what this is all about?
I love her. That is a Jewish value, and don't you forget it. Okay.
This is why she brought him here, isn't it?
You know what? Everyone go home. We're going to work on this show now. Bye. And anyone else who needs one, come on up after. I love you. But seriously, really, Benjamin. Okay, should I ask you the question again?
Yeah, ask me
All
the
right.
question.
I had a feeling. We got distracted. There was a potential mix-up in yours. What is it that made you so faithfully and deeply get involved with Momentum and invest in Momentum? And what is it about investing in Jewish values that speaks to you?
My oldest daughter went on one of the early trips, and it made a huge impact on her life and the 4 boys that she and her husband have. And when she brought it to the attention of our family foundation, it was a no-brainer. And when you think about it, the reason you're all here is you know that the impact a woman has in the house is unparalleled. And I really believe that we pick up what we are from our parents. And I had 2 great things in my life. I had great parents and I was born in America. Doesn't get any better than that. I was not raised Jewishly. I'm a Jew by choice. I became a Jew after my husband and I got married. I've never looked back. I love Israel. I wish it was closer, but besides that, but the values that a woman brings into the home really is imparted to all the children. And there's no other reason. And I think Adrian and I talked about this earlier. Gratitude's been really playing in my mind for the last month or so. And I really feel that's something that children need to pick up from us, because we are all a privileged group of people. We're here, we've got, we're a tribe here. That's it.
Wow. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for everything. Now, before I ask Mr. Mayberg to speak, I just want to point out that his wife is one of the Utah 8. Where are you, Minette? You wave your hand. There you go. You should also know that our founding president is here also. This and also our board members, Rivka Kidron, where are you, Rivka? She's awesome. And Connie Linda, where are you? Connie? There she is. Woo! And of course, our CEO, Ben Perry. Louis, you literally planted the seed. Tell us what your take is on why Momentum was the investment it was for you, why it was in many ways your brainchild as well, and what is it about Jewish values that you believe is the ultimate investment?
First of all, I want to thank you for hosting it, and second, I want to kind of figure out why I'm here, but I've always wondered why Ben is here as well. And if you're going to fly through Europe, don't check a bag. In any event, I'm not going to say I planted the seed. I'm going to say I had the opportunity to water the first seed.
Ooh.
Because the seed began when my wife made an appointment with me for her and Lori Latnick to come and propose an idea. It was called the Jewish Women's Renaissance Program, not project, program. And at the time, Lori was married to was the Rebbitzin of the Asia Torah chapter in Washington, D.C., based just in Rockville, Maryland. And they came in, and I remember the meeting. I still have the original proposal in my file. And my daughter, who is 28, was being bat mitzvahed, and I had prepared a speech for her bat mitzvah, which was Parsha Yitro. And in Parsha Yitro, Moses is having a conversation with God, Hashem, and Hashem tells him, he says, look, you have to get Beis Yisrael, Beis Yaakov on board before you can get Beis Yisrael on board. We translate that, for those of you not following what it means. Beis Yaakov means the women. You've heard of Beis Yaakov schools, it's for girls. He said that, so God was basically telling Moses, if you want to get the men on board with my plan, you need to get on board. And once that happens, things will roll along. So lo and behold, I just finished reading and studying that and writing a talk about it, about our responsibilities as a Jewish woman, my daughter, and they came in and they made this proposal about developing a program for women, and it was meant for Washington, and we funded it, and Minette and Lori being who they are, they're not going to be satisfied with Washington. So they started to, Washington is not enough. They need the world. So a year or so later, as they were going through this, they, planned this trip, and they ended up in Utah, and everybody's heard about the Utah 8, so I don't need to get into that. But as far as it resonating, I mean, that made a lot of sense. Anybody who's married knows, you better get, if your wife has got a direction, I have a ponytail because of my wife. For no other reason, okay? For 10 years when I left my company, she said, you need to grow your hair long, and then you can walk around the neighborhoods and look as eccentric as you are. So, and the day she's tired of it, we'll be gone. But our foundation is dedicated to the proliferation of Jewish wisdom and values in a contemporary world. That's one of our, founding themes in our mission. And what Momentum is doing is exactly that, and it's become, as you all know, a global phenomenon. And as just past Prime Minister of Israel, who was the diaspora ministry head, who, when we first negotiated that agreement, that was about the time, Ben, you joined, and thank goodness. And they've been he's government of Israel, a long-time partner, but he said at APAC, at the last APAC before the pandemic, the year before, he said that in front of 18,000 people, like 3 times, that this was and is the highest ROI of any investment that he made in the Jewish world. So, as a lifelong, financial services and investment professional, I mean, to do that in philanthropy, that lines up with my values, and I'm very proud of having been able to water a seed, and I take no credit beyond that other than helping to, write checks.
But before you move on, why Jewish values? You're a shrewd investor. What is it about Jewish values that is worth investing in?
Well, let me tell a little story, I think, that I think will kind of emphasize the importance of what is happening in the tragedy of the Jewish world, where we're losing, as the vast majority, in another generation. Of course, he's probably saying that in every generation as they get replenished, but it's a constant struggle. And we know that doing outreach and what you're doing, that as much as bringing people in the front door, they're going out the back door. But I was speaking in Seoul, Korea at the Seoul Stock Exchange Conference in 2011. And it was kind of an all-day affair, and you didn't kind of really know when you're going on. And so they put us into the boardroom of the stock exchange, and they were calling it the green room. It wasn't green, but and I was sitting there, and this Korean CEO, sitting next to me, and he asked for my card, and he looked at it, and he said, "Are you Jewish?" He did it with an accent. Well, we won't do that here. You can't do that anymore. And I said yes. The first thing he said is, "Oh, my daughter lives with a Jewish man in Europe." I'm thinking, "Oh, great. So exactly what you want to hear." But he then said to me, "Did you know that the #1 selling English book in Korea is the Schottenstein Gemara?" And I said, "Well, I knew that, and I have encountered in my work in Asia that a lot of people, I've seen it in Singapore, I've seen it in Hong Kong, in Korea, in Taiwan, study the Talmud." I said, "But why are you doing it?" He said, "You're a small people, you have lasted throughout the ages, and we need, we study it to figure out why you're successful so we can emulate that." And then he proceeded to pull out of his briefcase a tractate of he had the Schottenstein, he had a volume, and it was Bava Metzia, which is civil law. And he asked if I would sit and, study a little bit with him. I said, "Okay, we can do that." And it's funny, 20-something years before at an Asia Torah Shabbaton, it was exactly what he pulled out was the very first thing I ever learned. Wow. And he pulled it out, and I'll tell you very quickly. He pulled it out, and it was about ownership. And 2 men are walking on a road, and they see a prayer shawl. That's how it's translated in English, and I'm calling it a tallis because I'm reading, what it said there. And the 2 men are walking on a road, and they see a prayer shawl. That's how it's translated in English, and I'm calling it a tallis because I'm reading, what it said there. And they both say, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine. And they take it to a rabbi, abjugating it, and the outcome of it is that because they both say it's theirs, each one gets half. And then the second one is they coming along the road and one guy says it's all mine and the other guy says it's half mine. Well, then what's it get split up as? Well, the guy says it's all his gets half, and the guy says it's half his gets a quarter. So one guy has 3/4 and one guy has 1/4. Anyway, it's a logic system, and it's a very hard tractate. And about this time when we get done with that, I get called. They say, you need to get ready, you're up in 10 minutes. And so we start packing it up, and Israel moving away, he goes, by the way, he said, what's a talus? And I'm thinking to myself as I'm leaving, is here you are, you've got people who want to understand our success, and they're studying the depths of it, at least the Torah, at least one part of it, it's just one part of it, the Talmud, and they're doing that to determine the secret of our success. And he, as well as Mark Twain, who wrote Harper Bazaar, we've all heard of that, Why Have They Survived? He talks about all the empires that have come and gone, yet the Jew remains and will remain forever. And I said, and it occurred to me, and I ended up writing a piece in the Jerusalem Post in 2019 when I saw some other thing about the Koreans doing Garuta learning and all their things to try to get out of their introverted type of nature, and that they're learning math and they're learning this. And so I wrote another piece. Anyway, the bottom line was that I came to this conclusion that what they were missing is that you can study the Torah and you can get into the depth of our wisdom and knowledge. The same way you can go to the inverse side, that so much of our Jewish communities in the world and in this country, they focus on peoplehood ahead of any substantive Jewish knowledge and learning. Peoplehood is everything. And I think when Mark Twain, was trying to figure out why has the Jew been able to survive, and what I think many of us, I certainly didn't know, is that it's both our peoplehood, yes, but it's substantive Jewish learning. And without both, without living it and learning it, we can't survive as a people. And we have survived through the centuries, 3,500 years of recorded history, because those that survived lived and learned. And then we had people by choice, always, that kept the Jewish people going, for sure. And will, and more, and much more will live. So anyway.
Wow. So what I'm hearing is that it's not enough to figure out what you would do with the talus. We have to understand what the talus is. And I feel like what Momentum gets better than anybody else, because we are pre or post-denominational, because we believe fully and completely in the power of unity that is a unity without uniformity. That we think of our peoplehood, an example that I've often used, very similar to in your own families, is that everyone in your own family blooms differently. If something happens to a flower, you don't correct the flower. You don't think there's something wrong with the flower. You change the environment and the way the flower is nurtured. A mother's role in the world is to recognize that her children come in many different forms. She's going to have a sunflower that wants lots of attention, head bobbing at the light, and she's going to have a rose that's beautiful to look at and very fragrant, but super prickly, don't get too close, right? And she's gonna have those kids that are like ferns. They do better at the bottom of the garden, they're shade creatures, and they unravel only when it's dark. And she's gonna have tulips that come up early adapters, and then they die off early. A mother's job and Momentum's job is not to turn a tulip into a sunflower, or a sunflower into a rose, or a rose into a fern. The job of a mother is to be the ribbon, her arms like a ribbon, that gather together all of those disparate blooms and turn them into a bouquet that's exponentially more beautiful when tied together than they are apart. And this is what Momentum is doing with Jews around the world, no matter how they identify, where they practice, if they practice, what they believe, what they don't believe, is to be a ribbon because there is no question that the future of Jewish peoplehood depends not just on Jewish values, but also on the ability to have love with a purpose and not baseless hatred for those whose ways are different than ours. So I'm going to pass this down one last time, and I'm going to ask you to just give us one final thought that's occurred to you while listening to this panel speak.
My final thought, actually, when you were speaking, you reminded me of my experience this summer on my trip. We all live in, it's a difficult time, right? People, politics are polarizing, identities are polarizing, people are not listening to each other, and it's very stressful. When I was on this trip to Israel, I was struck by the fact that I had spent a week with people who I didn't know. And we came together to learn about Jewish values. And we came together to love Israel and learn about Israel as mothers. And I couldn't tell you where any of those women stand on any of the issues I just mentioned. I do know that we all believed in very different things. We come from very different backgrounds, and that didn't make an ounce of difference. And it was really, really, I'm trying to think of the word, heartwarming, but more than that, it gives me so much hope that if we can come together as Jews in Israel, as women, as mothers, and have that kind of an experience together, we should keep focusing on that, because there's something really important, right? And that is what is going to keep the Jewish people together. So I personally am just really excited about what we have ahead of us. I think every mother should go to Israel with momentum and have this experience and put their differences aside and actually think about what brings us together and really lean into that.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
I'm going to riff on what Debbie is saying. Years ago, my husband and I were talking to each other, and out of the blue, he said, "Do you believe in God?" I go, "Well, yes, of course." And he paused, and he goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "You don't?" And he goes, "No, I don't." I go, "Well, what do you believe in?" He goes, "I believe in the history of the Jewish people." And he said, "That's why we're going to fund the hospital." And he goes, "And that's why I believe in archaeology. The archaeology is a science that says so much about where we've come from. And it's solid. There's no other, you can't dispute it." And I think, I like to think that in my husband's last days, he did believe in God, but that is something that what Debbie is talking about in Adrian too, we're all different, we all have different ideas, and we come from different places, but we have a common goal, and that is the preservation of the Jewish people, and it's going to happen through our children. And we're blessed to have that blessing of being able to do that.
Yes.
I like that term for riff. I'm going to do a little bit myself. I don't know what it means, but I'm taking a chance on that. So,
You can't have a
Yeah,
ponytail and not
explain
know
it to
what
me.
riff means. I'm sorry.
what's that?
I said you can't have a ponytail and not know what it means to riff on something.
I don't have it by choice. I'm not a Jew by choice.
I like it. Sorry.
All right, well, anyway. The 70-year-old is now smiling. The 35-year-old still don't. So anyway, it's important to know where you've come from, the archaeological aspect, and to have that knowledge of history where we came from, so it kind of ties into what I said before, we got to know where we're going. So if you don't know where you've been, they used to say when they crossed in the West, the Indians, I said, why did they get lost? Because they didn't look at where they came from, right? So they tried to go back. That said, I'll make a comment, observation about this because I've seen it so much in the outreach work I've done through Asia Torah, and of course, the spiritual thinking and leadership behind this was Rav Noach of Asia Torah that, when I used to work in my company's office, I occasionally had people come up, non-Jews come to me and we'd be talking, and they say in varying ways, one of the things that they said they liked about working for my company was that they knew that I stood for something more than just making money, and that there was a higher value system around what I did and what I did with what I earned. And I was in financial business, so we were, there to make money but to do it with values, and you do your philanthropy with it. And that has always stuck with me, that that so often I hear Jews who are really embarrassed of their Judaism or wanting to learn and all of these other things. And it's those that we think are going to be against us who actually respect us when we know who we are, we stand up for our values, and we live and demonstrate them in the world. And it's when we're weak, or we're apologetic, or we try to be them, when we've always had problems in our history. And when you stand up strong and have confidence, they either stay out of the way or they have a high level of respect. And I think that's a big part of, I think, will come out of this when people are out there in the world learning about who they are, and to stop apologizing and trying to just keep up with those, because we've got our own tradition and histories that, whether they recognize them or not, their values come from us.
Wow.
And they're emulating us, so we should be proud of what we have.
Wow.
So I guess I have the honor, privilege of closing. So first of all, Adrian, thank you for everything. Adrian is amazing, if you haven't picked that up. And to my dear friends, Louis and Karen, thank you for being on this panel, and thank you for everything you do in the Jewish community. I just want to say, obviously I'm relatively new to this organization, but through my work at the Paul Singer Foundation, I've seen a tremendous number of organizations doing incredible work, and I'm really proud of all the work that we do. Momentum got to me in a personal way, and my involvement with Momentum is very personal. And after I joined the board, I made a very generous personal gift, which I'm very proud of because it means so much to me. And it was unsolicited, which was actually the best kind of gift you could ever give. It was really nice and well appreciated. So I'm proud of my gift, and I am tripling down for the next 3 years to this organization. And I invite any of you who feel so compelled to join me and my husband in supporting this incredible work. It is, all of this happens through philanthropy and through our generosity. And this is an invitation to join us if this is something that moves you. So thank you so much for coming, and early Shabbat Shalom. Oh, and they're waving to remind me that there are cards placed on the tables in the back if you would like more information about the mechanics of making a donation. So thank you. Thank you.